What's next for OTT? The future of programmatic video. Brought to you by PubMatic.
So welcome everybody to this virtual session where we'll be discussing the future of programmatic video and what's next for OTT. It's a really exciting time in the industry when a channel has as much potential as OTT does. So super important that we bring all parts of the industry together to make the most of this. And with that in mind, I would like to welcome our guests for this panel. Yun Yip, VP of Partnerships and Country Manager AUNZ for MediaMath, Jordan King, Director of Audience and Automation for Nine, and Peter Barry, Regional Director for Australia and New Zealand at PubMatic. I'm going to hand over to you, and if you'd like to do a brief introduction, let's go to you first, Yun.
Sure. So my name's Yun, as introduced by Emily, and I'm from MediaMath. So MediaMath is a omni-channel demand-side platform, and we have seen the dramatic increase in video advertising across different parts of the channels, be it desktop, mobile, CTV. We're actually very excited about what is to come for the next year.
Great. And Jordan?
My name's Jordan. I'm the Director of Audience and Automation at Nine. That's a fairly obtuse way of saying I look after programmatic. Nine is a media and technology business here in Australia that covers broadcast, radio, digital and print titles. And we are very much, our heritage is very ensconced within broadcast and digital for the purpose of today's conversation.
Great. And Peter?
Yeah, Peter Barry, Regional Director ANZ at PubMatic. PubMatic is an SSP, and we fuel the endless potential of internet content creators. And what that means is essentially we work with publishers to help them keep the lights on and keep creating the content that we all know and love. And we do that by being the SSP of choice for buyers and delivering the correct outcome for marketers.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and welcome again. So look, first question, a lot of focus obviously has been put into video streaming and OTT recently. There seems to be a huge opportunity, but what's the reality of this in your opinion? And let's go to Jordan first.
Yeah, thank you. The reality of the increase into OTT and video streaming is very much happening and is very real right now. So from a Nine perspective, programmatically, it's the majority of our video content by a long shot, and that has been growing over the last 3 or so years. And what we have seen is that more recently, OTT and specifically CTV has taken over as the main sort of portal of consumption for our audiences. The opportunity is both enormous and I won't quite say endless because there's only 25 million people in Australia, but it is pretty exciting. It's something where we're able to use, I guess, old understanding of consumption in a sort of video, audio, and the way that the messaging that people best react to, but with some of the more modern and intuitive, I guess, measurement and targeting capabilities that the digital ecosystem brings. So, yeah, the opportunity is enormous and it's fantastic and very exciting.
Great. Yun, over to you.
Yeah, I'll take a different lens on this. Looking at video advertising and looking at just IAB numbers, video has increased over 18% year on year based on the last quarter, and that is in spite of COVID. And when we actually start to think about video as part of general display, that's more than half of general display now. What is also interesting is that the audience of content streaming has shifted significantly as well, which ultimately drives an even larger opportunity for video advertising altogether. There's more people 65 plus than 18 to 24 actually streaming content at the moment.
Wow.
It's actually huge when you think about that. And I think the opportunity will continue to grow as we actually have better and more standardized measurement and attribution, because it will actually allow for a more holistic view of consumers across all screens, but also allows for brands to have with automation as well, it allows for brands to have a more dynamic way of speaking to their audience. So all in all, the opportunity does increase even further with better relevance as well as better value exchange between the brand and the consumer.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to be the odd one out and say it's not an opportunity. It is a huge opportunity, and it's here and it's now. I mean, Yun spoke to some numbers, but if you look at Disney Plus as an example, I think they hit their 60 million user target a couple of years early, largely driven probably by the lockdown. I'm sure Jordo could probably attest to the same for Stan subscriptions. I myself, Jordo, signed up for Stan over the past couple of months. You'll be glad to hear. And then companies like iFlix in Southeast Asia have seen huge user numbers increase, which has been amazing. But I guess the challenge therein lies the challenge is that the budgets have gone in the opposite direction around that same time period. So it's how do we lessen the delta between the user numbers and the decreased budgets? So that is a challenge. Just from a PubMatic perspective, we're actually recruiting for, I think it's 40 additional product and engineering staff in the OTT part of our business. So we're building out a whole bunch of stuff that's going to really take full advantage of the opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. So I think we can all agree that the audience are there and the opportunity is enormous. But are there any challenges that we're seeing around monetizing these fantastic audiences that video streaming are seeing? And I will go over to Yun first. Yes.
Yeah, first things first, it can be seen as a complex channel. Just think about the definition of OTT as an example, right? Is it CTV? Is it mobile? Is it desktop? And then from there, when you extrapolate that to how people plan and buy, who buys it? Because does it fall into the digital team? Does it fall into the TV team? So there is a legacy of issues that goes back a number of decades, where I believe the industry as a whole has been a little bit slower to adapt. And then that feeds into how success has been measured across linear, across OTT, across digital. Because it's a different consumer mindset, a different consumer journey. So how will success metrics be the same or different? And that can be different across brands, across different verticals too.
Okay. Pete, have you any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would come at it from a user experience perspective. So how do we replicate the experience that users are used to through linear TV on OTT? So users don't want to see the same ad twice. They don't want to see a circle as it's buffering, waiting for the ad to load. So how do we address that? Those challenges are real and present right now. So it's how do we use technology to be able to address those. So that'll be the number one challenge in my opinion.
Great. And over to you, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good question. I think there are some challenges, absolutely, but I think that broadly the monetization, or COVID aside, has been it's been fairly comprehensive in the past 24 months. It certainly has from a Nine perspective. I think to Pete's point, user experience and replicating the broadcast linear experience as closely as possible from a BVOD provider is one of the main focuses for that. And one of the solutions that's been presented by the video vendors and things like that has been server-side ad insertion for CTV, but on connected televisions, which is it stitches the ads in, and so the experience is very seamless, if you will. But it has some issues in itself in that the forecasting of the total available impressions and measuring drop off and things like that are not quite right, and they still need some work on sort of the tech end to get that right. But I think that is a step in the right direction. anything that is, back-to-backs, that is a major concern. We can't have sort of an advertiser, even if it's two messages going back-to-back. It's just something that is so foreign to the linear television experience. I think that if we're able to move away from those inferior ad experiences, I think that the audiences will stay. I think that they're there to stay as well, but they'll stay and enjoy the ad experience rather than find it interruptive. And I think that is one of the major keys. I think the last half of your question was, is the money? I would say absolutely the money is there. From a BVOD perspective, OTT, it is an emerging channel, something that's been growing at double digits in the Australian market, and I would suspect in the APAC market for the last 4 or 5 years, and there is no real reason, global pandemics aside, to think that trajectory should slow in the short term.
Thanks, Jordan, and Ewan and Pete. Jordan, you've sort of kind of half answered what was going to be my next question, which is, what are publishers actually? That's all right. It's all good. What are publishers doing to counter some of these challenges? And I think you've touched on that a lot with server-side ad insertion. But if I can just go over to Pete to see if you guys have any thoughts on that. So what are some of the measures that could be taken to counter the challenges?
Yeah, well, I guess work with the right tech vendor. I mentioned earlier on that we're employing a bunch of new engineers and product people around the OTT space. So we see header bidding as being the big opportunity for broadcast publishers in the coming months. And so we've got some product releases late this quarter, early next quarter to that effect, and that solves a lot of those challenges that we touched on. Back-to-backs, competitive exclusions. It's all server side, so the user experience is a lot more seamless, as Jordo said. So I think that certainly helps with that. And then I think from a marketer perspective, it can be great to work with large broadcast publishers who have an addressable audience or a logged-in audience, like Channel 9, and that means that the marketer can target users across devices, across channels, and so on. They know exactly who they're speaking to and what the message should be. So I think those are probably the two areas of focus.
Okay, thank you. And Ewan, how about from a buy-side perspective? What are you seeing? Are you seeing measures being taken that do help address some of these challenges? And is there anything else that you would like to see in this space?
Yeah, definitely. I think addressability is definitely one of which will help with the challenges. So we are investing in analytics, forecasting, campaign planning tools to actually help brands understand how to reach their audiences and their customers across different screens. So to that end, OTT identity solutions is definitely key. Also because it helps us enable much better targeting as well as frequency management when it comes to video ads. The other thing sort of goes back to the agencies, right, who form such a big part of driving these video dollars through technology. It's actually to help them understand the outcomes that technology can help them drive to. So measurement and attribution, but also for us to work with them on what can actually help them understand the landscape a little bit more.
Okay. Lovely, thank you. I just want to come back to something.
Can I just?
Oh, yeah, go.
Can I add a couple of points there? Sorry to jump off script. We did mention two things that are very very central focus from a programmatic perspective at Nine. One being addressability. Like I think if we're talking about long-term future and things like that of OTT, addressability is going to be at the very forefront, and there are various technology solutions and suggestions and things like that are going on right now between sort of all the tech vendors and the video vendors and like the walled gardens. And I think it's something that we are all sort of trying to work on the best solution that we can. Like from a Nine perspective, we have first-party logged-in data for all of our users, which is a fairly natural value exchange of being able to use the platform, and that's very central to our focus from now and moving forwards, and certainly sort of, the basis of what we're doing from a programmatic perspective. I think header bidding and addressability, they tie in so in like almost intrinsically together. Header bidding is going like what it will do from an OTT BVOD perspective, whether it is OTT or not, is the way that it opens up the inventory and the access to the inventory. It will make that the addressability when it's getting more niche, scalable. And that's probably looping back to one of your earlier questions, like that is a challenge, is making that the addressability scalable. Header bidding solves for that in a big way. And like as a broadcaster in this space, that is something that Nine has very much been on the forefront of encouraging. I think they're sort of arguably sort of duking it out with a few publishers in the US as to who's further along, but like I think this is something that will only become bigger for every broadcast publisher globally.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just in case there's anybody that's watching or listening that doesn't know what header bidding is, I'm not going to get into what it is exactly, but what it allows is, as Jordan mentioned, it allows all demand to see all of the inventory in real time, and the benefit to the marketer is that they get access programmatically to the best inventory, and for the publisher, the benefit is that they get a lot more competition, which drives their yield up. So that's essentially, it's not explaining what header bidding it is, but I guess it's explaining the benefits from both sides.
Yeah,
but I mean, the big thing that's important is it fundamentally changes the value exchange, which is if you're a marketer, you now have access to the most relevant inventory for the message you're trying to push or for the result you're trying to achieve. And like this is very proven from a display perspective that header bidding is the best way to go about achieving that. As this rolls out into premium video environments for the first time, broadcasters on CTV, I think that it has the ability to sort of supercharge what is a traditionally fantastic medium to be able to get a message to your audience.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, header bidding.
Can I just chime in on?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on one point as well. Like with all of these investments that we are putting into technology too, in the past, where say with linear, you would actually be able to target a consumer for that one campaign. But with what we are all actually doing, be it MediaMath, be it PubMatic, or be it Nine, what we actually can do now is to talk to a consumer beyond the one campaign and actually have very relevant messages, 2 years down the track, as opposed to just, 4 weeks down the track. So it does actually change the type of relationship every brand can have with the customer.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think we saw header bidding revolutionize the web industry, and it's going to do the same for CTV and OTT. So kind of, we've already touched on some of the opportunities that this brings. And I want to just ask about, like, as we are seeing a shift, and Jordan, actually, I might ask you whether we are seeing a shift, but are we seeing a shift from linear to AVOD in terms of audiences? Does this present any challenges in terms of retaining audiences or capturing new audiences? And if we agree that we are seeing a shift, then I will then flip over to Yun and ask about, like, what opportunities does this give us? So over to you first, Jordan.
No worries. Look, I think it would be insincere for me to say there isn't a shift in audiences. There is. The consumption habits of our audiences today are fundamentally different to what they were 15 years ago, 20 years ago. In an era where you could put if you wanted to reach the most Australians, and presumably this is a global trend, your biggest population, you'd put an ad on the Sunday night movie or during 60 Minutes or something like that, and you would reach 3.4 million Australians. That is something where, while those opportunities can still happen, something like the NRL, the State of Origin, or the Melbourne Cup, or the AFL Grand Final, like that, we do still have those sort of those national events. That's not something that you can access every week. But something that is very true, to paraphrase Kim Portrait, is that TV has had children though, and what has happened is that we've seen, more channels. So it's not just one single Channel 9 channel, but we have the sub channels as well. But we also have audiences catching up on those programs. So we'll have something like a flagship moment on Married at First Sight, where we'll have 1.8 million Australians tune in linear, and then we'll have 800,000, a million Australians catch that up. But it's not necessarily in the next 15 minutes after it's gone live. That can happen over a week. So I think that there is a fundamental shift in the way that audiences are consuming products, but I don't think there's a fundamental shift in the fact that that there's not declines from an audience perspective. People still want entertainment. People still want local entertainment. People still want to engage with water cooler conversation. And I think maybe not right now, virtual water cooler conversation, but I think that is something that it's television, for better or worse, for 60 years has been a common unifier, and I think that it's something that will continue to do that, just that it evolves in that path.
Okay, thank you. And Yun, what do these sort of shifting trends mean for buyers, and what are the opportunities there?
I would say that the trends would be to look at how DSPs can be used to enhance campaign results or campaign success. So to be able to have data, whether it's from a SSP or whether it's from one of the supply partners, to fuel future campaigns, that's one way to do it. But also to be able to have a more personalized way of speaking to a consumer through dynamic messaging, ultimately changes the way that brands can talk to their consumers. The other part of it too that I might bring up to what Jordan was saying is that consumer habits have actually changed, or media consumption has actually changed. The total pool of audience who actually do tune into TV probably hasn't shifted as much as what people think. It's just the way in which people actually consume has changed. So to my point, it is all about being able to harness the data that we can actually take, be it first-party solutions, or be it, and using those to target the right audience, or to actually consider other forms of technology, such as that of dynamic messaging, to drive a better consumer outcome.
Great, thank you. And over to you, Pete.
You mentioned earlier on, Emily, that what can publishers do to retain and then grow their audiences, and I think I'm bringing it right back again to the user, making sure that user experience is great. But I mean, why do users come to the publisher or the broadcaster in the first place? It's the content that they invest in locally, and how are they going to invest more money? It's by working with, coming at it from a tech perspective, tech vendors who deliver the most efficient product, and essentially deliver the best profit for that broadcaster, and then that profit can be reinvested into content. And so I think that's really important for the broadcaster to work with the right vendors to make sure that they are generating that profit and reinvesting it. I think that's important, and it's something that maybe isn't always talked about, how tech in particular drives more efficiency and therefore greater profit for publishers.
Great. Lovely. Thank you, guys. Well, listen, we're running really short on time. So I am going to ask you to very quickly gaze into your imaginary crystal balls and tell us what is next for OTT advertising in this region. So I will go first to you, Pete.
All right. So I see more, as I look into the crystal ball, I see more cord cutting, if we want to call it that, or people... given everything that's going on at the moment, I think people are hitting on tough times. I think they're not going to be paying for as many subscriptions, whether that's Netflix, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, and so on. So they're going to be cutting back on that stuff. And actually, I see that as an opportunity for many of the broadcasters, as those users are moving more to AVOD or BVOD to get their premium content fix. So I think that's going to be happening over the next couple of months. I think also that the advertising opportunity for marketers will be far greater as the audience grows, and we're anticipating at PubMatic 20 to 40% greater opportunity by the end of the year. So those are the two things that I would call out.
Lovely. What about you, Jordan?
I'm going to take a slightly different angle, and I'm going to say I think that creative is probably really key to the future of OTT. I think that for better or worse, from a optimized mechanisms of delivery, we are in a reasonable stead, and we're heading in a very good direction. I'm yet to see, and this may be my own ignorance, and somebody with creative insights may be able to do a demonstration and show me different. But I'm yet to see any of the technical advances that we're making in this space overlay with creative. And I think that, to be effective advertising and to make the best use of OTT, you really need to be creating great ads. And I think that the additional data and insights and learnings that we can take from these devices will inform for better campaigns, more engaging creative, which is only going to enhance the experience and continue that audience growth.
Lovely, thank you. And finally, Yu, what does the future hold?
I was going to talk about, I thought I might stay away from measurement and attribution. I think I've spoken enough about that because that will just continue to evolve and grow. But I'm going to go on a slightly different tangent to what Jordan brought up, and that's around interactivity. I think there will be a lot more interactivity capabilities on OTT, and ultimately that will change how we actually think about e-commerce. And I think that will also continue to boost e-commerce and how users actually transact online across every single device.
Wonderful. Well, look, it looks like the future is pretty rosy for OTT. So thank you for gazing into your crystal balls. Thank you for joining us on this panel. And with that, I will wrap up.